We often think that standardized exams and meritocracy are modern inventions, designed to create a level playing field and give everyone a fair shot. Or, when looking back at ancient China's imperial examinations, many view them simply as an obsolete civil service test where scholars memorized ancient texts, just to become government officials. But if you look closer at history, that perspective only scratches the surface. For over 300 years, the imperial exam, known as Keju, was far more than a test of knowledge. It was in reality one of the most sophisticated and durable political operating systems ever created. It was engineered not just to recruit talent, but at its core, to concentrate imperial power, prevent civil wars, and maintain dynastic rule. And the very system that built unprecedented stability for a massive empire ultimately became the cage that bound it when the world outside changed. To understand why this system emerged, we have to travel back in time before the exams existed. In earlier dynasties such as the Han, Wei, and Jin, government appointments relied heavily on hereditary privilege and aristocratic recommendations. Power was tightly held by elite noble families, wealthy dynasties with land, private armies, and political influence passed down for generations. Think of it like a massive corporation where every critical department head is a child of the founding shareholders. They can't be fired, they have their own personal security teams, and at any moment they could team up to overthrow the CEO. In this scenario, ancient emperors were like CEOs living under the constant threat of being ousted by the very aristocrats around them. To survive and solidify absolute control, emperors needed a completely new hiring algorithm, a mechanism to bypass the noble families entirely and open a direct pathway for commoners to enter the government. That is why the Sui and Tang dynasties laid the first bricks for the imperial examination system. Historically, Keju is recognized as a national exam offering candidates who passed rigorous testing a place in the civil bureaucracy. However, through the lens of institutional analysis, a remarkably subtle hidden system operated behind this public goal. First, it served as a mechanism to channel and drain the energy of the intelligentsia. In a feudal society, the smartest and most articulate minds posed the single greatest threat to the crown if they became discontented. By creating an extraordinarily difficult exam, the state funneled the nation's brightest thinkers into a decades-long grind. When a person spends their entire youth, sometimes 20 to 40 years, memorizing, analyzing, and writing essays strictly according to imperial standards, they simply have no time, energy, or alternative ideology left to organize a rebellion. Second, it created a powerful illusion of equality. Even though in reality, the proportion of poor peasants who actually passed was small due to the high cost of education, the theoretical possibility that any male could sit for the exam fostered a deep societal belief. The popular mindset that even a humble house could produce a high official led people to view the system as fair. When individuals believed their failure was due to a lack of personal effort rather than institutional bias, social unrest was drastically reduced. Third, it acted as a master tool for ideological homogenization. By mandating that exam content be based strictly on state-approved Confucian texts, the emperor ensured that everyone who entered government shared the exact same core values, loyalty to the throne, and official vocabulary. Looking at the course of history, the exam system went through several key transformations. By the Song dynasty, Keju reached full maturity and became almost the sole path to political power. The Song actively favored civil governance over military rule, placing scholars chosen through the exams in charge of army commands to eliminate the threat of military coups. The rise of printing technology during this era also made books more accessible, expanding the reach of the exams. However, by the Ming and Qing dynasties, the system grew increasingly rigid and formulaic. The court imposed strict structural requirements on essay writing, reaching its peak with the eight-legged essay. Candidates were forbidden from expressing original thoughts or creative ideas. Instead, they had to write within a rigid, predefined framework, strictly adhering to specific Neo-Confucian commentaries. This rigidity persisted for centuries until the empire faced industrial firepower and Western expansion in the 19th century. It was then that the fatal flaw of the system was laid bare. A system designed to produce scholars who memorized ancient classics and wrote standardized essays was completely helpless against modern challenges like engineering, economics, international law, and military science. In 1905, the Qing dynasty officially abolished the imperial exams. Just a few years later, the dynasty itself collapsed, bringing more than 2 millennia of imperial rule to an end. In terms of its real-world impact on ordinary people, the exam system left deep psychological scars. For an individual candidate, the pressure was never just personal. It carried the weight of the entire family name. Entire households would exhaust their savings or go into debt to support a scholar for decades. This immense expectation generated crushing psychological strain. History records numerous instances of candidates losing their sanity inside the exam booths or spending their entire lives taking the test over and over again into their 60s and 70s. On a societal level, the single-minded focus on passing exams to become an official created a cultural disdain for practical professions such as trade, engineering, medicine, and the arts. Instead of applying brilliant minds to improving agriculture, developing technology, or exploring natural sciences, vast intellectual talent was channeled into analyzing classical texts. This inadvertently slowed the pace of technological innovation during the empire's final centuries. Yet, viewing Keju purely as a historical bottleneck would overlook a much broader and more objective picture. Many historical analysts argue that judging the system entirely negatively misses the context of its time. For over 1,000 years, while Europe remained fragmented under feudal lords constantly waging war, China maintained a unified state run by a merit-based civil bureaucracy rather than inherited nobility. Keju acted as a powerful cultural and institutional glue, binding a vast territory with diverse regional dialects into a remarkably stable society. In fact, many Western scholars later acknowledged that this meritocratic examination system served as a direct inspiration for Western nations when building their own modern civil service systems in the 19th century. From the perspective of pre-modern governance, it was an undeniably revolutionary breakthrough. Looking back over 13 centuries, China's imperial exam stands as a classic historical example of how a single system can be both the builder and the downfall of an empire. It began as a brilliant solution to dismantle aristocratic privilege, delivering stability and relative fairness, but ended as a rigid framework that stifled adaptation when a new era arrived. The legacy of this system has far from disappeared. The intense academic pressure, the reverence for credentials, and the belief that test scores can define one's destiny still resonate deeply in educational cultures today. Do you see parallels between modern standardized exams and the imperial exam system of the past? Are we using testing to unlock human potential, or are we using it to preserve an existing social order? Share your thoughts in the comments below.